Hey everyone, Dr. Mungli here. So this is my third part of a video where I was making video on dietary fuels. So now in this video I am going to explain you what is the dietary fuel stores that we have in our body. Now the dietary fuel stores, when we talk about dietary fuel stores, why really need to why we really need to have these dietary fuel stores? What is the use of them? So if you think like that, so it is virtually impossible for us to eat 24 hours every day. Imagine that you are eating every time, like in that 24 hours, constantly eating. Now it is virtually impossible to eat constantly for 24 hours because we get saturated. We have this hypothalamus, like appetite control center and all that. So it is impossible to eat constantly. So what is the plan here? So we have a dietary fuels, and these dietary fuels will maintain our dietary needs or the energy needs of our tissues in between the meals. Like we have breakfast in the morning, we have lunch in the afternoon, and we have dinner in the evening, and all this. Like in between lunch and breakfast and lunch, in between lunch and the dinner, and in between dinner and the next day breakfast. So when we go into overnight fasting, so the basal energy needs of our body will be met by the energy body fuels, body fuel storage that we have. What kind of body fuel storage that we have? So this body fuel store, in general body fuel stores should be light in weight, and also they should store maximum amount of energy, and also when there is an oxidation or when there is a breakdown process, it should break down into easily digestible or easily oxidizable form of an energy. So the answer to this is in the form of fat. Remember that we have an adipose tissue entire our body. Just beneath the skin we have adipose tissue, and this adipose tissue is going to store enough fat for for the energy needs of a person. Now what is there in the adipose tissue? In the adipose tissue we have something called as triacyl glycerol, and this triacyl glycerol is simply referred as fat, and this fat is stored in the adipose tissue, right? And now what else we have other than the adipose tissue? What is the other body fuel storage that we have? So we have a storage of carbohydrate in our body, and that is called as glycogen. So glycogen is basically stored in the liver, it is stored in the muscle, virtually it is stored in every cell in our body, but most predominantly in the liver and skeletal muscle. So the glycogen can be broken down to give glucose, and glucose can act as a fuel for our cells. Now what else we have? Other than the carbohydrate, we have proteins. Proteins can be stored in the skeletal muscle, so skeletal muscle proteins, and virtually every cell has a protein, and during times of needs the proteins can also be used as the fuel to certain extent. So let's get into the individual ones. So first I am going to explain you about the fat. So the fat that is stored, that is acting as a storage form of an energy in our body. So we have an adipose tissue, and that particular beneath the skin and around, and also the fat is there around the organs. So the fat it stores. So we have around 18 kgs of adipose tissue. Remember, so in a 70 kg man who is on well balanced diet, so it stores about 18 kgs of adipose tissue. In that there will be 15 kgs of the fat that is present, because the adipose tissue has got 15% of water. So overall in a 70 kg man there will be around 18 kgs of adipose tissue storing 15 kgs of fat, and this 15 kgs of fat, it gives like 135,000 kilocalories of energy. This is a lot of energy. So this particular fat can undergo lipolysis, means a breakdown of triacyl glycerol into 3 fatty acid and a glycerol molecule, and this fatty acid can undergo oxidation in every cell that has got mitochondria except in the neurons and red blood cells. So what happens is the fatty acids undergoes oxidation to give acetyl CoA, and that acetyl CoA go into TCA cycle, and from in the TCA cycle you get NADH, FADH2 and GTP. NADH and FADH2 will go to electron transport chain, and that's how you make ATP. So this is how calories are provided by oxidation of fat, that is the triacyl glycerol present in the adipose tissue, which is around 18 kg of adipose tissue giving 15, means which has got 15 kgs of fat. Okay. Now this 15 kg of fat, it is storing 85% of our stored energy in the body. Like if your all the stored energy in our body, and that 85%, now that's the big number, 85% of the stored energy that we have in our body, it is all there in the form 15 kgs of fat that is there in the adipose tissue. Now let's go on to see the glycogen. You know, the glycogen which is stored in the liver. You know, glycogen is stored in the liver. That's the major organ which stores glycogen in terms of the mass. Like it has got around 200 grams of glycogen is present under fed condition. When we eat food, so at that time, especially when you eat carbohydrate diet, so 200 grams of glycogen is there in the liver. And when we are in like overnight fasting condition, so that 200 gram will reduce to 80 grams. That means it is being used, right? So 200 gram will become 80 grams after overnight fasting. So that means around 120 grams of glycogen is broken down to release glucose. So and virtually other cells also have got glycogen to a certain extent. Now, what is the purpose of this glycogen which is stored in the liver? So, the glycogen that is stored in the liver, it is purely meant to maintain the blood glucose level under fasting condition, and in a normal 70 kg man on well balanced diet. So, the glycogen can last for 24 hours of fasting. So, after that it is completely depleted, and then we will have to go into the fat, ultimately entirely we get into the fat oxidation. Of course, we can use protein degradation, which are amino acids coming from protein degradation. Now, we have muscles also. Now, muscle have got certain amount of glycogen which is stored, and you imagine the amount of muscle mass that we have. So, the glycogen that is stored in the muscle, skeletal muscle, it's around 150 grams of glycogen, which gives like 0.4% of total the energy that is stored in our body. It is skeletal muscle glycogen contributes to 0.4%, and the liver glycogen, it contributes to 0.2% of the stored energy in our body. So, that means compared to fat, which is 85%, look at the glycogen contribution is 0.4% from the liver, 0.2% from the skeletal muscle, 0.4% is for skeletal muscle, 0.2% is for the liver. So, overall glycogen contributes to 0.6% of stored energy in our body. So, which is negligible when compared to 85% that is coming from the adipose tissue in the form of fat. Now, let us move on to see. And also imagine, like, what if all the calories that are coming from the adipose tissue, like 15 kgs of fat that we have in the adipose tissue, which will give like 135,000 kilocalories of energy. Imagine if that is there in the form of glycogen. So, if the glycogen is the predominant storage form of energy, like fat, if it was, just assume, what would have happened? Because the skeletal muscles are the ones where you could have stored all this glycogen, and the skeletal muscle contains 80% of water, unlike adipose tissue which contains only 15% of water. Skeletal muscle contains 80% of water, and imagine storing 135,000 kilocalories of energy in the form of glycogen. That would have weighed around 170 kgs, kgs of glycogen will equal to the 15 kg of adipose fat present in the adipose tissue. Imagine the weight now. That is why in our body adipose tissue is the preferred form of storage of energy in our body in the form of fat, because it is light in weight, stores, it is packed with the high energy there, and also it is a easily digestible form of storage form here, because it can be broken down into fatty acid and eventually into acetyl CoA, which directly enter into TCA cycle. And unlike glycogen to store that much energy, you need 170 kg of glycogen, and then imagine the weight of the person, 170 kg plus 70 kg, right? So, that much amount, is the weight. So, that means around 240 kg a person average weight would have been there. So, that is the reason, the lightweight and compact form of energy and easily digestible form, answer is the fat. Now, what else is the energy storage in our body? So, the energy storage in our body, the third form is the protein. You know, protein, around 6 kgs of protein which is stored in our body. So, in the form of energy storage, in terms of energy storage, 6 kg of protein. So, it can give it can be used as energy source, and that contributes to 14.4% of energy, 14.4% of total stored energy in our body. It is there in the form of protein. Now, compare the numbers. 85% of stored energy is there in the form of fat. 14.4% of stored energy, total stored energy in our body is there in the form of protein, and only 0.6% of stored energy is there in the form of glycogen, right? So, that's why, like, now when we go into fasting condition, so your like glucagon levels increased, and this glucagon initially it breaks this glycogen and present in the liver, so release that as glucose. So, that glucose can be used by the brain, it can be used by the red blood cells. Meanwhile, what glucagon does, it will go to the adipose tissue and bring that fatty acids to give it to all the tissues including the liver, and they will conduct oxidation, fatty acid oxidation, to meet the energy needs, right? And then what happens as the fasting continues, like if the person is fasting more than 12 hours, even the skeletal muscle proteins can also undergo degradation, and also the normal protein turnover, which are giving amino acids, and these amino acids can reach liver, and in the liver amino acids can undergo gluconeogenesis process to make glucose, and there can be breakdown of 6 kgs of proteins, and then they can go into muscle can undergo dysfunctional, proteins can undergo dysfunction, overall protein dysfunction can be seen beyond that point. So, this is what is the fuel storages that are present in our body. So, the most predominant one is the fat, 85% of the calorie coming from the fat, and next is the protein, 14.4% of stored energy, and the third is the glycogen, which is 0.6% of stored energy. So, this is all about body fuel storage. I hope this video has helped you in understanding the concept, and these are the basic concepts that you really need to understand. So, and also if you haven't subscribed to my channel, so consider subscribing to this channel, so that you get a update, and also click that bell icon down there so that you get regular notification as and when I upload videos, and also they will appear as a recommended video or something. And if you found this video, so kindly spread the news and share it with your friends, so that it will be useful to others also. So, that's about it, and I will see you in my next video. Till then, you take care.